Hey everybody, it's Jason with Rotoboss Rotary Attachments. Today's video we're going to go over how to set up the Rotoboss Rotary in Lightburn the way that we recommend doing it. That way you get the best results and the less hassle when you're trying to set it up. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and make the screen bigger and we'll start going over it. Okay, so when setting up Rotoboss Rotary is different from other rotaries in several ways. One is the setup. Some of you guys have probably seen videos about the 360 setup, which is fine if you're doing wraps, but not good if you're doing regular items, because when you do a 360 setup, when you go to do a scale item like a 2-inch logo or design, it's going to be small. So a lot of times people will say, well, then that's where you stretch it by 10% in that direction, and that's basically you're just compensating for that 360 setup. The whole idea of doing the scale setup is to go ahead and basically set up your scale. So when you do a 1-inch or 2-inch or 3-inch design, that's what you're going to get. The perspective of it is something different, and that is based on the size of the image for the cup that you're doing it on. So with doing the scale, the idea is, so like if you pull up the rotary setup here and you select roller, this object diameter and circumference and all that stuff is irrelevant for a roller. But what that does is, you see the calculation here for your circumference. That should give you your Y size for a complete revolution or a complete wrap. And this number is pretty good if you put all the numbers in here right, which we'll go over here in a second. If you put all the numbers in there right, it'll give you the circumference, and that circumference is pretty accurate. It may need to be changed, and it's changed in your template, not by changing your steps. The 360 setup is 4 chucks, and as Lightburn put in here, for roller rotary, the values below are not required. It's just a useful calculator. So it has no bearing on what happens with the cup when you do an engraving. So the only thing that really matters is your steps per rotation and roller diameter. So for the Rotoboss, the Junior, or the Ascend, they all have the same roller diameter, which is 56 millimeters. Your steps per rotation are going to vary based on your machine, and in the manual we have a list of different types of machines that you can choose from, and those are your baseline numbers. Those numbers can fluctuate depending on what you're doing, but if it's done by the manual with the recommended 20-ounce cup, which you don't have to use, but you still do the same process on whatever you use, it's just keep in mind that your steps may vary quite a bit, because when you do something like a water bottle versus a tumbler, you're going to have to reduce your steps to compensate for what's riding on the wheels and what's actually being engraved. So, so going through the whole process, I've got this set up. I'm remote to a laser in the shop, so hopefully we don't have any issues with it. But anyways, so when you first get your rotary, obviously you're going to unpack it. We highly recommend looking at the owner's manual. It does have a write-up on it on how to do the setup, and we're working on ways to make the flow or the workflow of that much better or much easier to read and understand. And so I wanted to do a video to help you kind of visualize the whole setup process. I'm not at a laser. I'm in my office right now. Laser's out in the shop, actually. So we won't be doing that part in this video. This is mainly just to show you how to set it up in Lightburn. So the first thing I recommend is, I don't use the rotary setup, or I don't recommend using the rotary setup, because this part down here at the bottom, this object diameter and circumference, confuses people and they think they have to enter something. The manual, I use 88 millimeters. That's what it was set up with originally, because it did affect it at one point, but I think something in Lightburn changed and it no longer has any effect on the roller. It just a chuck function. So that's where the circumference and object diameter come into play, mainly is just for the chuck. Roller, it's just a useful calculator, and by saying that, it basically, if you have all, like say this is a 20-ounce cup, it's about 88 millimeters. Your circumference 276.460. So what that does is gives you an idea of the template size you need to make a complete revolution around the cup. And once your steps are set, if you're doing wraps, you want to do it individually for the cup because it can vary a little bit between a 20, 15, 30 ounce, 40 ounce, whatever. So you want to specialize these numbers to the given cup. If you're just doing regular engravings, single-sided or simple names, things like that, once you have your steps and your roller diameter set, you really don't have to mess with anything because any variance that you're going to have, you're not really going to notice by visual eye. So we're going to use a Thunder, for instance. Thunder recommended 4400. This is just a starting point. So like I said, the numbers could fluctuate anywhere from probably 2400. It usually doesn't go any higher than 4400, but so 2400 to 4400, somewhere in that range. So if you see a lower number or something like that, typically it's because you're doing a water bottle instead of, or a stemless wine glass or something like that. If you're doing a tumbler, you're going to be closer to the 44, probably 38 to 44, somewhere in that ballpark. So anyway, so the basic setup, 4400, 56 millimeters for your roller diameter. It's standard across all the Rotoboss Junior and Ascend models. And then if you want, you got the 276 if you're doing a wrap. But the wraps are something completely different. That there's other people out there that do more wraps and can help you with that better. But for just basic setup and use, for everyday logos, designs, names, things like that, this is what this is for. So 4400, 56 millimeters is your roller diameter. You want to go ahead and hit OK. So now you're going to create a 1-inch box. You can do that by just going up here and typing in 1 IN, and it's going to scale it. Or you can do the 25.4 millimeters, which is the 1 inch. And once that's done, you'll go ahead and do your engraving on the cup. And you want to make sure that you do the engraving for a couple reasons. One is because engraving is what you're actually going to be doing, and doing a line, it makes a lot of sudden movements, which could cause slippage, which will inherently change the overall size of the image, or you'll get kind of overrun or something like that. And there's a video on our site on how to slow down your settings and things like that as well. So feel free to take a look at that, and I'll link that in the playlist, or I'll put it in a playlist for light burn and setup instructions. So you get your 1-inch square, you go ahead and do an engrave. Like so my Nova 24, I run at 613. And what that does is basically, that's my minimum power settings for that laser. So when I engrave on a single layer piece of tape, kind of like what I have here. Let's see. So you have a single layer piece of tape, sometimes double, depends. So there's no need to really do the tape and then the foil tape and then the regular tape and all that stuff, because you're changing the diameter of the cup when you do that. So when you get something set, you take the tape off, it could change things. So typically I use 1 layer tape, sometimes 2 if it's a one-off or something I can't replace. I'll make sure to use a second layer just as a safety barrier more than anything. And you only need to have the tape over the area you're engraving. You don't want it anywhere where the wheels are going to roll, because you don't want any obstructions or deviations when the wheels roll over the tape. So only putting tape in the area that you need it. Find your low power settings. Like I said, with the Nova 24, mine's 600 at 13, and that gives me a nice white engrave on the cup, and I can measure that. So once you do your engrave, if your box is bigger than 1 inch, you want to go ahead and lower your steps. How much you lower them depends on how much it's off. So if at 4,400 you're at 1.5 inches, let's say, then you want to lower your steps to bring that square smaller, or make the square smaller. Um, and then you can do that by going in here through the rotary setup, or you can also do it here. You go to edit machine settings and then go down to your rotary parameters right here, because these are the only numbers that matter. So that's all that shows up there. And the diameter is just talking about the rotary diameter. So again, you can do that 2 different ways, that way or this way, and you're going to get the same information, same inputs and results. I like to use machine settings because sometimes on here I find that the settings don't always transfer over right, or if I shut everything down and start it back up, the settings may be different. I don't know if this is like a soft setting and then the machine settings are the hard settings, because you have to actually write it to the controller. But either way, you can do it and you'll be fine. It's just, I've had experience in others as well that doing it here, sometimes when you shut everything down and come back to redo it or do something else, the settings are completely different or changed. So do it how you will. It's just, there's just 2 different ways to do it is all I'm trying to say. So you do your 1 inch square and you're too big. So what you'll do is go in here. So if you're supposed to be 1 inch, you're 1.25 inches. I think about it in kind of percentages. So you're 25% greater than what it should be. So if you take 4,400 times what? So that's about 330 that you'd take off. It's not an exact science, but it gets you in the ballpark. So in that case, I would probably go down to 4,000, and then run it again. And a good thing about the tape, it's fairly easy to do. You're not damaging anything. And with the squares, usually I'll just make that change. And then on the square on the cup, I'll just kind of move the origin over like I'm doing here, but on the cup. With the machine, just move the origin over so you can see a portion of the new engraving below the previous one. That way you can get a measurement off of it. So you don't have to have all these squares all over the place. You just kind of stack them up as you go down the cup or around the cup even, and make your changes that way. It's hard to say in a video, and I'm trying to make this as general as possible. But if you have to change your steps, what I like to do is, like, 4,400 is too high. So I like to shoot low. So I would go to like 38 and try that one and see how much lower that is below 1 inch, and then kind of split the difference. And then that way you can fine tune it from there. Because otherwise you might jump all over the place trying to find your number. But finding a high and kind of a low, and then going in between there with your settings with less drastic settings, like maybe 20 to 50 steps per test. And then once this is done, you can go in and on the machine settings, you can actually save to file. And again, I'm not going to get into that on this video, but we do have another video showing how to do this, where you can save that file for like a 40-ounce JDS water bottle. That way, when you want to do that bottle, you just click on load from file, load that file, all your settings come in, and you're good to go. That way you don't need any spacers or twist on caps or whatever's out there that helps compensate for that. But the most important thing is, once you find your steps, So let's say 4,000 is our number. Once you find that number, what I recommend doing, just like with anything else, is you want to save it to file. So you'll save it to file and you'll put it somewhere. And let's say we'll do a new folder and rotary settings. So once you have rotary settings, you can go in here and I put baseline is how I label mine. And that setup will cover you from a shot glass to a 30-ounce cup with little to no changes needed in the settings for your regular engravings. Again, 360s, things like that, double-sided, a little bit different story. You want to be a little bit more precise on that, but just for basic settings and being able to run the machine, that should get you where you're going. So you save that, and then let's say we're doing a JDS water bottle, and it's 3250. All right. So once we do that, I want to save that to file. Of course, after you dial it in, that's our final number. Then I would do 40-ounce JDS water bottle. So now you build kind of a library of files based on more or less your baseline, and then any unique items where you would have to change your settings to accomplish the same results. And the setup is exactly the same as to what file or what settings you're going to use, or what setup process you're going to use, no matter what object it is. And if you want to fine tune and get every single size cup that you're going to do done and put into a library, that's perfectly fine. But your baseline setup by this, and of course the instruction manual, that will get you up and running. And then once you kind of learn how things work and what can be done or not done to tweak settings or to better your results or what have you, then you can come in and do them that way. Let's see. The other thing that I recommend, like when you're doing this, is like, let's say we're on a Rotoboss, right? So I use center left origin. So it's going to start here, it's going to rotate to the bottom, and then start engraving towards the top of the design. Now, to mitigate any slippage or anything like that, the best thing to do is use bottom left, because at this point, especially if you're using JDS, there's no logos to match up, line up, or anything. You can pretty much put it anywhere. Use the bottom left. That way, as soon as you hit start, it just starts engraving. The cup don't have any excessive movements or turns, so you don't have to worry about a lot of things, and it just goes straight to engraving. With all that being said, we're just trying to give you basic setup instructions on how to do it. If the machines weren't being used right now, I would have kind of a setup, and I'll still do one with the tape test and all that stuff in a future video. I just wanted to cover the basic setup for setting up the Rotoboss. Now, with all that being said, now if you're wanting to do a wrap, you would basically come to this section here, 276.46. So that is what you would highlight this, and you'd go to your height, 276.46. And then let's say you want your template to be 4 inches, so about 101 millimeters. So now you have a template to make a full 360-degree rotation of the rotary. And if you do this, and you can do it as a test, you can just make it real small. Put a line on your start point, which would be down here, where the red dot is, and then you'd hit frame, and you would see that the cup rotates all the way around back to the starting point, and then back to the original start point. If it's a little bit long, then you basically shorten your template a little bit here, until you get it to where that line, or that red dot, touches the start point on both revolutions. Once you do that, you know you've got it set up for a complete revolution. And if you want to, you can change this to fill and run yourself a quick engraving around the cup to make sure everything lines up. Once it does, then the number up here is what your number is for a full revolution. Because again, general, unless you're down to the point whatever, like a 20 ounce is 88 millimeters, a 30 ounce is 101. Most of the 40s are about 95 to 98. So those are general numbers, unless you have a way to accurately measure those down to the decimal point. Your template may need to change a little bit from what the settings say here in the rotary setup tool. So if your number don't match this, don't worry about it. Don't freak out. Just you adjust your template. Then once your template size is set, then you can go in and then you can put your designs and stuff inside of here and make your wrap design fit inside of this box. That way you know that everything you have will fit and it'll make a complete revolution. And again, there's other people on here that have, like Katie Devlin, she has very good information on how to set up for a wrap and do wraps. Robert Kofed has some pretty good videos on it as well as some other people. So this is, again, just a general overview of how to set everything up. And if you have any questions or anything, my number's on the Rotary. You can reach me on social media via several different ways. You can call, text, email. Always here to help in any way that I can. I hope this video helps kind of reinforce what's in the manual and can get you up and running. Usually it doesn't take long to do this, but just try not to get confused with other people's videos. I know people that make the videos mean well, but a lot of them don't know how these operate. They're just doing kind of what they know or what they perceive as the right way to do it. So it's another reason why I wanted to do a video to show you how it was designed and meant to be set up and run. So by all means, if you have any questions about anything, reach out to me. I'll be happy to help. And sorry this video is so long, but hopefully it's helpful. If you have any inputs on anything that I put out, I'm happy to address them and reshoot another video if I need to cover more specifics. But for this purpose, I think we've covered everything, generally speaking, as to what you would need to do to set up your rotary out of the box and get up and running as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So, all right. Again, thanks for watching the video. Sorry it was so long, but I hope it helps. And check out our other videos, and we'll have more to come on these particular topics as time goes on. All right. Everybody have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in the next video.